given unto his messenger.
Continue to drive Africa's integration, governance, and development agenda while addressing emerging global and regional challenges. Following which, we will have a statement by His Excellency, Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. I have the honor to invite His Excellency Thank you. Your Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the African Union, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. Your Excellency Doctors, African Cooperation and Mauritanians Abroad, Chairperson of the African Union Executive. Your Excellency Dr. Monique Nzanza Baganwa, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, Commissioners, and all leadership of the Commission, Excellencies, Directors of Organs and Recs, Excellencies, Ambassador, morning to all of you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a profound honor and privilege for me today to welcome you to the Open Harbor, which is also known for its landscapes, warm hospitality, and thriving cultural scenes. Excellencies, ladies and commissioners today, who will continue to drive Africa's integration, governance, and development agenda while addressing emerging global and regional challenges. Having said so, the program of today's Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, host country of the African Union, following which we will have a statement by His Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the African Under Secretary General and Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Ahmed Salim Marzouk, Minister of Foreign Affairs, African Cooperation and Mauritanians Abroad, Chairperson of the African Union. I now have the honor to invite His Excellency Dr. Gideon Timotheo, Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, to deliver his opening remarks. Your Excellency.
Your Excellency, Dr. Mohammed Salem Ould Merzouk, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Cooperation and Mauritanians Abroad, and Chairperson of the Executive Council. Your Excellency, Musa Faki Mohammed, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Your Excellency, Dr. Claver Gatete, Executive Secretary of UNECA and Under Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished ministers, ladies and gentlemen. I have the honor and great pleasure to warmly welcome all of you. Excellencies, As we gather here today, we are confronting the reality of turbulent changes that are severely challenging multilateralism. For Africa and the rest of the global South, multilateralism is both a choice and a necessity. It is a choice because we believe in collaboration, consensus building, and partnership. It is a necessity because most of the challenges we face are global and their solutions are found in multilateral frameworks. From climate change, environmental pollution and degradation to desertification, biodiversity, pandemics, and other global health issues, all require multilateral solutions. We must thus redouble our efforts to strengthen the United Nations, the African Union, and other African regional bodies. They are indispensable for the health and well-being of current and future generations. Your Excellencies, it is also alarming to witness the increasing number of internal and interstate conflicts globally. Africa has, unfortunately, more than its fair share. It is not just conflicts, but we are also seeing polarization and geopolitical rivalry that are posing a challenge to the world order as we know it. Advances in technology, such as artificial intelligence, are also giving rise to threats and opportunities that would have been considered science fiction just a few years ago. In these times, African unity, cooperation, and solidarity are of the utmost importance. The coming wave of change could either lift us all to a better position or throw us into the unknown. How we manage the risks and how we utilize the opportunities of the new era will determine our destiny as a continent. As a continent, we advocate for a reformed global governance, including the reform of the United Nations Security Council. We also call for an international financial system that supports Africa's growth and enables the continent to tackle its challenge effectively. We demand access to climate financing and technology. These efforts and the need to overcome man-made and natural disasters requires us to stand united and use our continental organization as an effective instrument to advance our collective aspirations. Mr. Chairperson, the vision outlined in Africa's Agenda 2063 holds great promise for our continent's prosperity. Realizing this immense potential requires more than just strategic frameworks. It requires strong political will, effective coordination, and robust partnerships among member states and regional economic communities. Only through collective efforts can we ensure the successful implementation of Agenda 2063 and transform Africa into the Africa we want. This requires us to strengthen our efforts to realize Africa's flagship projects, to unlock our growth and prosperity potential, and consolidate on the progress we made in creating a continent-wide free trade area. Ethiopia is committed to starting trading under the African Continental Free Trade Area as part of our endeavor to ensure the transformative impact of inter-Africa trade on continental integration. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as Africa continues to push for greater participation in global decision-making, Ethiopia is convinced that the African Union's membership in the G20 would provide our continent with a vital platform to shape global economic governance. This would enable us to play a key role in policies that directly affect Africa's socio-economic development, ensuring that our continent's priorities are addressed in global decision-making processes. I'd also like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Republic of South Africa for its chairmanship of the G20. We are confident that under its able leadership, Africa's agenda will come to the fore in this platform. The peace and security situation in our continent will also require us all to strengthen our continental-wide institutional capacity to foster mediation and conflict prevention mechanisms. Ethiopia also takes this opportunity to commend the African Union's peacekeeping missions and the critical role they play in maintaining peace and security across the continent. As we deliberate on this and other critical issues, let us renew our commitment to the traditional African solidarity and friendship. Africa's future depends on our collective will and action. Together, we can overcome the challenge before us and unlock the potential of our continent for the benefit of all African peoples. I look forward to productive discussions and meaningful outcomes in the course of this session. Once again, Excellencies, I would like to welcome you all to your city, Addis Ababa, and I wish you a productive and enjoyable stay. Thank you very much.
Peace and security in the continent to achieve the Africa we want. Excellencies, is yours.
Il y a 4 jours, une grande figure de l'histoire africaine a disparu.
Of the African history has disappeared. A great freedom fighter and for the freedom has left us. I'm here referring to President Sam Nujoma of Namibia. I would request you to stand and observe 1 minute of silence in his memory.
Paix à son âme, je vous remercie.
May his soul rest in peace. Thank you, Excellency. Mr. Mohammed Salim Al-Marzouk, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania, Chairman of the Executive Council of the African Union, members of the Executive Council, Mr. Executive Secretary of the UN ECA, Madam Deputy Chairperson of the distinguished commissioners, members of the Permanent Representatives Committee, chief executives of the regional economic communities and regional mechanisms, distinguished representatives and special representatives and heads of the AU offices, observers, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed, invited guests, dear friends. May I first of all, for the last time as chairperson of the Commission, to welcome you to the headquarters of your organization in Nelson Mandela Hall, the eternal witness to our meetings and our continental diplomacy. To you, my dear brother Mohammed Salim Marzouk, I would like to tell you in particular how much I am delighted to end my term along with you. I will cherish a fond memory of your commitment, your openness, and your constant availability. I would also like to present my sincere gratitude to the Permanent Representatives Committee, in whose meetings I have not always been able to participate, which I certainly regret. Particularly the last one, during which I wanted to say farewell to the members, better late than never. Distinguished ambassadors, I want to say thank you to you all. I congratulate the PRC on the excellent work done, which is reflected in its report, which will be presented shortly. In this regard, I would like to express my warm congratulations to you, Madam Chairperson of the PRC, my dear sister Khadijatu, for your efficiency, your dynamism, and your leadership. With the Permanent Representatives Committee, as you may imagine, the Commission has a beautiful story, and like all the beautiful stories, it is, as a rule, full of passion, liveliness, and mutual enrichment. With the regional economic communities, which are under the new revised protocol, henceforth among us, we should be among them, even if unfortunately it has not always been the case, so be it. I would like to share a brotherly thought of solidarity with them. To the staff, the technical staff, technicians, security and protocol, who devote themselves days and nights to establish the best working conditions, and beyond them, to all our organs, I express my grateful thanks and all my acknowledgement for their efficient support throughout the years that brought us together in this great adventure. In truth, speaking to you, Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, members of the Executive Council, I had, over the last 8 years during my 2 terms, the feeling of always belonging to the central body of our organization, the Executive Council. This club of Ministers of Foreign Affairs, which I had the honor to chair just before my accession to my current position. For 17 years, I have been successively as Minister of Foreign Affairs of my country, and 8 years as the chairperson of the African Union Commission. Besides, I see all some former colleagues whose hair, like mine, have taken a certain silvery color. Mahmoud Youssef, Mbela Lejeune, Robert Ducey, I don't know what is his secret, his hair is always black. Jean-Claude Dakoso, Nasser Burita, Mamadou Tangara. I see also somewhere Pierre Mukoko, the head of the reform unit, who were one of our colleagues during that period. How to hide my regret and to see that 6 of our colleagues still cannot take their seat among us because of unconstitutional changes in their countries. Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, dear friends, together with the constant support of our heads of state, we have done a lot and laid the foundation for more ambitious programs. There is almost no significant field in which we have not worked, endeavored, and sometimes produced results, even if political, economic, and diplomatic adversities have sometimes reduced our productivity and our production. This is to use an agricultural metaphor. In this area of health, COVID-19 was overcome, as was Ebola and Mpox. Africa CDC is asserting itself as an effective tool. The Africa Medicines Agency is taking shape. In fact, the African Humanitarian Agency is coming out of its limbo. PANVAC is consolidating itself. Education is modernizing and definitely heads for the future by focusing attention and effort on innovation and artificial intelligence. The industrial strategy is on the horizon. The African Continental Free Trade Area is getting operationalized despite obstacles. African positions on climate change are being strengthened. Agriculture and the blue economy are gradually taking their natural place in our strategic choices. The infrastructure and energy sector has made significant strides. Almost all the organs of the African Union and all the specialized agencies, and whose list I want to spare you, have been making constant progress, both in terms of their institutional consolidation and in the diversity of the programs and projects implemented. The institutional reform of our organization has made significant progress and continues for positive conclusions. Our international partnerships are widening and open new horizons. Our international credibility and visibility in the global arena have asserted themselves significantly. Detailed reports on all this track record will be presented, I'm sure, at the summit. It is superfluous to encumber you now. Excellency, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Ministers, such achievements should not hide our inadequacies, our shortcomings, and our difficulties and the challenges which we continue to face from all sides. Violent conflicts continue to kill on a large scale in Africa. The Sudan and Eastern DRC, that is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, are in all respects the most poignant, the most tragic theaters. The difficult financing of our organization continues to weigh heavily on its effectiveness and independence of decision making. The revitalization of the Peace Fund and the attainment of its first objective is encouraging. The weakening of African solidarity and the sagging soulmate Pan-Africanism dampens our ardor and reduces the scope and resonance of our redeployment at the continental and international levels. This situation is all the more worrying as at a time when multilateralism, already in a bad shape for some time now, seems to have to face new challenges and blows from across the Atlantic. So we have to pull ourselves up, and we need to do it now, here and now. Excellencies, dear brothers and dear friends, soon a new leadership will be elected in order to contribute to paving its way. I attracted the high attention of all the heads of state of the continent in writing qualified by a great African president as a fireball to some issues whose solution commands the survival of our organization. I continue to increasingly believe that if we do not quickly grasp the issues of our political architecture, peace, security, and governance, the question of partnerships, the financing of our organization, and the powers of the Commission and its chairperson, it would frankly be a source of concern for the future of our organization. That is the main message that I want to convey in all humility to our next leadership, to which I wish full success. With these words, I would like to say goodbye to you, with my throat choked with emotion and nostalgia already for your conclave, the resumption of my freedom and the joys it gives me at this moment is my most pleasant consolation. 15 March 2025, I will have ended my term and I will not stay maybe one day more. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for these insightful remarks. An Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa to deliver his statement. Your Excellency.
The Council of the African Union, Your Excellency Musa Faki Mohamed, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency Gideon Timotheus, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Your Excellency Dr. Monique Sanzabaganwa, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Excellencies, Ministers are here present, Heads of Delegation of the African Union Member States, Excellencies, Heads the representatives of the regional economic communities, organizations, and development partners, distinguished delegates, colleagues, good morning. It is an honor to address this esteemed gathering at the 46th Ordinary Session of the Executive Council of the African Union under the significant theme, Justice for Africans and the People of African Descent through Reparations. I wish to extend my gratitude to the African Union Commission for prioritizing this theme of the year, and I would like to use this opportunity to congratulate the African Union Chairperson, His Excellency Musa Faki Mohamed, for his exemplary leadership throughout his tenure. We thank you very much. I also salute the heads of state and government who have committed to launching the 2025 theme in their respective countries, demonstrating their collective resolve to secure justice for Africa and its diaspora. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, we cannot contest the fact that the transatlantic slave trade and colonial exploitation robbed Africa of its people, resources, and dignity, and left behind inequalities that persist in global financial systems, trade structures, and governance institutions till this day. The extraction of Africa's resources without corresponding development, the undervaluation of the African economies in global credit assessments, and the systemic barriers to trade and investment are indeed contemporary manifestations of the historical injustices. It is therefore crucial that these beyond financial compensation must be addressed as part of our conversation on reparative justice. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Africa's current global financial standing reveals the stark inequalities it faces. The continent possesses 30% of the world's mineral reserves, including 40% of the gold and up to 90% of its chromium and platinum. It also contains as much as 65% of the world's arable land, yet Africa accounts for less than 3% of global trade and only 1% of global manufacturing output. Furthermore, in 2023, for example, intra-African trade stood at just 16% compared to the intra-European trade at 68%. Moreover, it is unjust that the entire African continent has an IMF shareholding equal to one of a single country, Germany. These disparities are not just due to lack of economic potential, but to entrenched structural barriers that keep Africa in a cycle of economic dependency. Distinguished delegates, in addition to this, the injustice extends to Africa's credit ratings, which are dominated by external agencies that sometimes apply unfair and subjective assessments to African economies. As we speak, only 2 countries, Botswana and Mauritius, hold investment-grade ratings, while others, despite sound economic fundamentals, are burdened with high-risk labels. This situation inflames borrowing costs, stifles investment, and keeps African economies locked in debt cycles. Added to these economic disparities is the fact that although Africa contributed the least to climate change, it is suffering the most from its effects. Currently, climate change is costing Africa up to 5% of GDP. Yet, of the $10 trillion invested in globally in clean energy between 2015 and 2022, Africa received only 2%. However, this must change. Africa cannot build prosperity on a foundation designed to constrain its growth. To translate this call for justice into tangible outcomes, I propose 5 key areas of focus. First, the current global financial architecture is outdated, inequitable, and unjust, and must be reformed to be fit for purpose. We must advocate for debt restructuring that allows African nations to invest in their people and development instead of paying exorbitant interest rates. A just world requires governance reforms in international financial institutions to ensure that Africa has a strong voice in shaping global economic policies. Also, it is imperative to establish an African-led credit rating agency to ensure fair assessments reflect Africa's true economic realities rather than outdated risk perceptions. Second, the African Continental Free Trade Area is a game changer. With a market of 1.5 billion people and a combined GDP of over $3 trillion US, it presents an unparalleled opportunity to boost industrialization and trade within the continent. It is therefore essential to fully harness the CFTA's potential to accelerate investments in infrastructure and manufacturing to reduce dependency on external markets. It is also paramount that we develop regional value chains to ensure that Africa produces and processes its own raw materials and creates jobs and industries that benefit Africans. Third, we must prioritize in-continent value addition on Africa's vast mineral wealth. For centuries, Africa's wealth has fueled the prosperity of others while its own people remain impoverished. This must end. Africa's resources must benefit Africans first, rather than being exported in raw form and re-imported at a very high cost. True reparative justice means that Africa's resources must work for Africa. Fourth, we must recognize that Africa's strength extends beyond its borders. In this regard, the African diaspora, which is connected to the continent through historical injustices, must be a key partner in our development. To this end, we must foster economic and cultural partnerships with the diaspora through investment platforms and heritage initiatives, such as the establishment of scholarships programs for descendants of enslaved Africans to reconnect with and contribute to Africa's development. Furthermore, we must reclaim our identity and history by demanding the restitution of stolen African artifacts and cultural heritage. Finally, the forced movement of our ancestors centuries ago must now be countered with the freedom of mobility. We must accelerate the African integration because a fragmented Africa can never reach its full potential. This requires that we implement the Africa Protocol on free movement of persons to facilitate trade, knowledge transfer, and cultural unity, and strengthen regional economic cooperation to enhance resilience and shared prosperity. Excellencies, the injustice of the past must no longer define Africa's future. We have the tools, the resources, and the will to reclaim Africa's agency, and the ECA remains steadfast in our commitment to work with you and bridge the gap between Africa and the diaspora, reclaim our economic sovereignty, and secure a future where all Africans can live with dignity and prosperity. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
It is now my distinct honor to invite His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Salim Weld Marzouk, Minister of Union Executive Council, to deliver his statement. Your Excellency.
In the name of Allah, and praise be given unto His Messenger. Excellencies within the bodies of the African Union, ladies and gentlemen, may I at the outset extend my heartfelt gratitude on behalf of you all to the people and government of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia for the very warm hospitality and kind welcome that was extended unto us ever since we set foot in this beautiful land. So I also wish to commend the performance of the Honorable Musabaki Mohammed, who is the President of the African Commission, as well as the members of the Commission who have attended the most recent edition of the Executive Council for their excellent execution of the mandate as conferred by our union which should actually turn into an instrument to serve the ambitions and aspirations of our continent in a spirit of complementarity and prosperity. So, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today we convene after 1 year since I was given the mandate to chair this council, as we are now about to give the gavel to brotherly Angola, so as for it to continue to serve the interest of our dear continent. At the time you would actually assume the presidency of the Executive Council for a year ago, the world was already extended or exposed to a crisis. The war in Ukraine, the unspeakable war in Gaza, as well as the conflicts and strife that our continent suffers from. Our world was actually fractured and is shaken in its own fundamentals ever since the consensus reached in 1945. There are three riptides that destroy and deconstruct our environment every day. As you do have Professor Salame, Kasam Salame, who actually spoke of resorting to force, not because one respects those principles, but simply they are being jeopardized. And the second type of riptide that we have questions with regard to the functioning of the Peace and Security Council, which is actually supposed to ensure and guarantee the fundamentals for peace, and even through the charter of the Union. I would say that this is not a recent development, but it dates back actually to the early 2000, early in the beginning of this millennium. And as my country has witnessed, we can see actually that this year was the year of many challenges that brought about aspiration and hopes. And we have had many achievements, constructive achievements. And throughout this year, we, with great resolve, made sure that the voice of Africa be heard in international fora, and to strengthen our global partnership, and also our commitment to reform our union. We convened an extraordinary meeting of our Executive Council in March of last year, where we had actually to adopt the new principles that will direct our execution of those resolutions adopted by our Executive Council during the 12th session that was held with regard to alternation as well as to the reform of the 5 regions that we have within our union. At the time, resolutions were made with regard to the execution of this mandate, as well as defining the positions and also conduct elections on the basis of regional of our regions with regard to the position of chair and vice chair, and also for representatives and delegates to be appointed. And now we are actually reaping the fruit of such efforts by holding very clear elections, so as to elect a new leadership for our commission. In November of last year, we also convened an extraordinary meeting in order to address other issues that were without solutions, so as to assess the competences within the African Union, or the SACA operation. And this meeting has actually led to the constitution of a restricted committee that is to ensure that this mandate be dispatched and also be executed further to the resolutions that were made by member states so as for the Commission to strengthen its performance. Very soon you will be given a report once the committee actually puts the finishing touches on this document. So ladies and gentlemen, the activity of our Executive Council was very sustained throughout last year, and through the Nairobi delegation we actually held a meeting for ministers of agriculture, and also during our ordinary meeting in Accra, and also to take part in the extraordinary summit in Kampala with regard to the agricultural reform program. And we did, throughout these meetings, adopt a series of resolutions in order to ensure food security and also to build agricultural capacity and reduce the impact of famine or hunger in Africa in the present or in the future. And we have also worked in earnest on implementing the Peace Fund and made sure that the African Union would be able to take effectively part in the G20. And there are also a series of other important resolutions that were made in various areas that should serve our union in line with Agenda 2063. So in this regard, we had to strengthen our relations with our international partners and therefore defend the interest of our continent in international and global fora. And these were most of the efforts that were engaged throughout last year. We had the ministerial meeting of the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD, within the Japanese capital, the city of Tokyo, and that session allowed us actually to assess cooperation from the year 2021 until 2024, and also prepare the 9th summit for this very important partnership, which is to be convened in the city of Yokohama in Japan. The also African-Turkish conference in Djibouti that was held in November last year, whereby we reviewed and assessed of the strategy, our joint strategy for the years of 2021 until 2026 as adopted by the African-Turkish summit, which was held previously. We also had the first session of the Russian-African conference that was held in November of last year in the city of Sochi. The meeting of ministers of foreign affairs of Africa with Scandinavian nations, their counterparts from Scandinavian nations, along with members of the G20 in the margin of the ordinary General Assembly of the United Nations. And we were keen throughout such meetings and numerous conferences that were held at various levels. We were keen on strengthening and building our relations with our development partners so as to, for the continent to greatly benefit from such partnerships. And I would say that in this regard, I did take part in your name in a number of roundtables as well as meetings on the issue of migration, climate change, and others. And I have met with dozens of ministers of foreign affairs from the entire world, and I have always tabled the African, the challenges being faced by Africa with regard to climate change in Africa, and also how to address the issue of migration and to reform the United Nations Security Council, as well as the World Trade Organization. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, we have, during this period, made very important strides in our effort to strengthen our African Union through resolutions that would be serving the interest of our peoples and achieve security and development in all areas. Today we are assuming a major responsibility so as to continue down this path and also to work on strengthening the principles of cooperation and complementarity, which actually represents the essence of our aspirations, and consistent with these, we have actually convened today's session, and which will be also where we will see very important elections. And in this regard, I would invite you all to please ensure that the elections are held with a spirit of African cooperation and brotherhood. And we would like also for these resolutions to make this organization a platform for cooperation and mutual assistance, and also to achieve the aspirations and ambitions of our African peoples in terms of union and also in prosperity. I wish to close my statement by insisting on some elements that were inspired by my modest experience within this council. We, in the beginning of our statement, we actually spoke to global evolution, which is actually quite concerning and full of uncertainty, but at the same time it does actually invite us to choose the best for us and to continue make efforts in this regard. So we should learn from the current uncertainty a lesson that should be a permanent concern for us. The only alternative we have is to strengthen our organization, our continental organization, which should be the only place where we should have the blossoming of all our projects, be they political or otherwise. There is a new polarity being developed, and it should be actually quite efficient. However, there is little room for fragmentation and atomization. So we today, as tomorrow, we are demanded to show greater integration and solidarity and mutual responsibility. This is the temple of our strength. This very room, regardless of the scenario, the only useful organization for us is the African Union. Africa will never be strong should this assembly not address all of the ideas that were championed by the founding fathers, and we have the responsibility to turn them into reality. So we should seek the most effective ways to continue to work on convergence, because this is what the matter consists in. We need to work on developing the wake of convergence, as Mr. Musa had said, and we should do so while respecting the letter of our text. We need to work on this harmony that should serve as the source of our strength. Time is short, and we have to make advances at the pace that will allow us to bridge as soon as possible the gaps that we have with others. So unity, solidarity, and wisdom must be the true levers for all of our efforts here, and this is also what is at stake in our collective odyssey. I thank you all, and peace be upon you, and I bid you successful proceedings.